Welcome back to this week's episode of Titanic Talkline. I am Alexia, and so this is something that I found out about right about the beginning of when I started this show. I found this absolutely A-plus parody merch online, and my first thought was, I gotta talk to that person. So I found them, and I did. And I normally go on a little bit more with housekeeping and stuff, but I'm just gonna get right into this interview because it was a ton of fun. Well, I can tell who my guest is because I'm the one who does the invites, but just for the sake of the people listening to the show, could you tell everyone who you are?
Sure. My name's Alex Bonson. I'm a native Vermonter, and I make little collectibles as a side gig.
Your your username, I guess, is a suspicious duck, right?
It is, yeah. That's I guess you could say is my artist handle. So I needed something to go by in social media and in the artistry world. So that's what I decided to go with.
Where'd that come from? Have you been compared in your past to a suspicious duck?
No, I wish it was something that interesting. It was just something that came to mind, something really random that I thought people would find funny and help them remember me by.
I happen to think it's funny. I I also happen to think that your toy is really funny. I don't want to give it away. So what is this Titanic toy that you make? Could you tell everyone about it?
Yeah. So it was actually in a line of stuff I made. So I'll start by kind of just, I guess, explaining my process. Is
Yeah.
I make tiny, I guess you could say, plastic figurines or just anything really out of my 3D printer. I paint them and put them in little like official plastic packaging, make them look pretty official looking, and then put them on my Etsy store. So the one you're referencing is one based off of a scene in the Titanic movie, where it's probably my favorite scene in any movie at this point. But it's a passenger who falls off the end of the ship and hits a propeller on his way down, with a nice little sound effect to go with it.
Thunk. Yeah, it's very memorable. I the toy particularly struck me because I have a friend who's a teacher, and her favorite movie in that moment in that movie is man hitting propeller.
I know. As soon as I put it like out into the world, there are a lot of comments of just saying, "Oh man, I remember seeing this scene in theaters and just cracking up." It was like the one scene that kind of made things memorable in the midst of all the chaos and sorrow that was happening in every other scene.
It is just kind of a moment of I mean, it's not ridiculous in that like that could never happen because like I can see where it would happen, but it is kind of ridiculous.
I know, it kind of just sticks out. Like there were a lot of people kind of chiming in with the same kind of memory I had when I first saw the movie, where you're just your eyes are glued to the screen because these horrible tragedies are happening, and then just randomly this comedic slapstick scene of some guy hitting the propeller on the way down. Just it's the one thing that sticks out. And it was one of those scenes where I was like, okay, if I were to make a collectible out of any movie scene, what's one that people would kind of be like, oh yeah, I remember that happening. And that was really one that stuck out. I wanted to like make something that would kind of draw people's attention immediately. And this seemed to do the trick.
Yeah, seriously. How many of them have you sold so far?
Like a lot of my other ones, I try and do a limited batch. So for this one, it started out just as a one-time thing. I entered it for like a small art contest that another collectible artist was doing, and I put it on Reddit initially in the 3D printing subreddit, and it got like 20,000 upvotes. And so I was like, okay, maybe I should actually try and sell these. So in the midst of the chaos of everyone liking it, I put the one I made on eBay, and within 15 minutes or so, it got taken down because eBay thought it was like some type of I don't know, bootleg that was trying to come off as like official merch of the
Right.
movie, even though I tried to make it clear it was just a fan made toy.
Oh man.
So I was like, okay, well, I'll just make a better version. So, and I'll make a kind of a small batch of them. So with the help of someone who's way better at 3D modeling than me, I got a more historically accurate propeller rendered and printed. I've changed the background of it to make it less official to the movie, to kind of help avoid any copyright issues, I guess.
Right.
I didn't want to get sued trying to just
Have
sell
fun.
something fun. Yeah. And I sold about 12 and kept the first one for myself. But it's a fun process. Yeah.
That's really neat. I bought one for said friend, and
yes, you did.
I did. So I was visiting my family in Texas for an extended period. I was there for 2 months, but I had tickets to a show back here in Maryland, and the toy happened to get here before I did. So I landed here and saw it was here, and I contacted my friend who did not have a lot of time. She's like, I don't have time to hang out. I'm like, I don't care if you don't have time to hang out. You have 5 minutes to come by my house and get something that I got you. And she was so excited, she almost dropped the box.
I have to ask, did it arrive intact?
It did.
It did. Okay. I was worried because, so I think yours was one of the first included in the first shipments that made it okay, because at one point it got like, as we approached summer more, it got super hot, and there were like 2 or 3 that where the glue that I had used came undone. So like I got a message back from one person with like the guy had fallen off the packaging into the water, which I guess was supposed to happen.
Right.
But he was supposed to stay on there. Exactly. But the glue came undone in the summer heat during transit. And I mean, it was shipped all the way to California, so I guess that kind of made sense. But I'm when I make it again, I'm going to try and find an adhesive a bit more durable to the summer heat. But I'm glad to hear yours made it. Okay.
Yeah, I made it. I think so it comes in kind of like you said, official looking packaging, in that it has the cardboard backing and then that sort of plastic dome on top of it.
Yeah.
And the plastic, it's not a dome, but the plastic case, at least in this toy, it kind of held it in place.
Yeah, so I know I really lucked out with that. Like when I printed it, it was just large enough for the packaging, where it kind of helped keep it in place.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and they're called. I learned in looking for them, and because in the midst of learning this technique and this skill of making these things, that they're called bubble blisters, which I never would have guessed. But that's the technical try now, right? It's not the most appealing word.
Seriously, that's gross. But I mean, yeah, that makes sense. What is the process for making one of these? Obviously, you don't need to give away any trade secrets, but like from start to finish, because it does look, it looks like it pretty official. Like how did this get made?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And when I first stumbled upon the small community of artists who make collectibles like this, I was just baffled and had no idea where to start. But I was fortunately the small community of these people who make these things are very, very nice, and were able to answer some of my questions on how to make it. So basically, and there are different ways, but for what I do personally is I have a 3D printer that instead of the typical filament, which is like spools of spaghetti looking stuff, you use a vat of resin, this kind of liquid plastic that slowly creates layers of a mold.
Very, very recently, only very recently heard of a resin 3D printer, and I was wondering how it worked.
Yeah, it's pretty yucky and toxic. It's not the most ideal way. It's
resin's pretty gross in and of itself.
Yeah, so the resin reacts to UV light, so there's a screen on the bottom of that slowly hardens the resin and creates the layers and forms it into whatever shape you want, based off of the computer model. So I created after the second version of the propeller was modeled for me. I printed the propeller, I printed the guy. I then have to be called curing the resin because it's pretty toxic still when it comes out. Then I have to prime it, and then I used airbrush to paint the propeller, and then with very careful, steady hands with a paintbrush, I painted the little passenger dude.
Guy.
Stuck him on, created the graphic, packaging graphic in Photoshop, and then printed that on just regular photo paper, glued it with some adhesive spray onto like some chipboard that you would get at like a Michael's store, and then using some harder to find tools, rounded the edges, and then put the little sombrero punch in the top to make it look more official. So that's kind of a really rough overview of how it's done. I feel like a fraud sometimes in my methods because a lot of people that are better known in the community, like Obvious Plant or Kingdom of Spiders. They're people who like have really grown into like quite kind of breaking into the mainstream of making these collectibles, and they will like actually hand paint or hand model things. A lot of the time it's actual like action figure looking stuff. So if you just browse Instagram or social media for similar people that do similar types of stuff, you'll see that their technique is pretty hardcore, and that they will put in like a lot of detailed work into hand modeling out of clay.
I just brought up the Etsy for, it's right in front of me, Kingdom of Spiders, and I'm looking at this horrifying looking custom cat bus. Definitely not the version from the movie itself. It's a little bit more scurry, but I see what you mean. It is definitely very it's a different kind of detailed, where you got the scoring in of the fur and the very detailed teeth. It really doesn't sound like I'm describing something from a Ghibli film.
I know I know what one you're talking about, and I think this particular artist has done stuff even for the movie industry. So there are people like him who do this for a living, and like really know how to make really realistic or cool looking stuff just by hand without even needing like a 3D printer. But for mass producing stuff, I'm glad I went the 3D printer route, because I don't have to deal with like hand modeling each individual thing. I can just, with my printer, make a bunch of them just over the course of a few hours. It basically prints the models themselves, and I just have to worry about painting and packaging them. So yeah, it's a fun process. I definitely was like in the midst of I want to say midlife crisis kind of situation when I was wondering what to do, because I needed a hobby, something productive, and preferably something to make some money on the side. So this turned out to be the perfect thing.
I heard everything you said, and I was about to ask you a question, but then I saw one more item at the very bottom of Kingdom of Spiders' Etsy store called Monster Fetus, and I clicked on it.
Oh no, do you regret that decision?
Maybe? Yes, I definitely don't. I'm not happy that I looked at it, but I'm also very impressed with the detail, because you're right, there's a lot of art that goes into this into the creating of models and miniatures and all that sort of thing. I think that when some people think 3D printing, they just think, oh, you pick a design and go. But it's not that easy.
Yeah. No, and in fact, it's interesting that a lot of the community surrounding 3D printing is interested mostly in like Dungeons and Dragons and making models for figurines for like tabletop gaming. So basically any video you want to find on how to 3D print, it's like you've dived into a the nerdy geeky culture of like tabletop and Dungeons and Dragon figurines. So
That's kind of what my
it's
friends
it's a,
do.
yeah, which I'm all for it. I think
Mhm.
it's a really cool community, but it's interesting how they've kind of like dominated the 3D printing market. Which I guess if you think about it, there's not too many other things you'd want to 3D print on a regular basis. So it
I
makes
was gonna
sense.
ask about like what stuff, being as you're in the 3D community, besides that tabletop kind of stuff. I'm not in the community. I know nothing about 3D printing other than it looks quite difficult. Like,
Mhm.
what are people making?
Yeah, so if you go to sites like Thingiverse, where people can upload their models for anyone to use for free, you'll find a lot of like attachments for like just regular tools you might use, or
Mhm.
um, fun little desktop knickknacks to print for the hell of it. There's pretty much just anything you could kind of think of. There's probably a 3D printable version of it to some degree, and a lot of people um, will even take models from video games and turn them into 3D prints. Um,
I just went to Thingiverse, and on the first page I see there's a lot. There's an astronaut sitting on the moon figurine, a card game keeper,
mhm.
a
VW bus.
yes, a VW bus, and I think my favorite is the Star Wars X-wing lamp. That
Hmm.
looks pretty impressive. Rounding it out with the thinking Mewtwo.
Hmm. And a lot of this stuff you'll find on Etsy too.
I'm sure.
People will. I mean, it's kind of controversial sometimes because people will just kind of take any kind of free model and then try and sell it on Etsy. So you'll see a lot of really weird stuff that's dominating the Etsy market. But other stuff, yeah, people put a lot of time into creating it in Blender or other type of program, and selling them on Etsy or otherwise other
Right.
places. So yeah, it's a really cool kind of hobby. I didn't think I'd get into it, but this it's something really interesting when you combine it with like the hobby of
Mhm.
making official looking collectibles.
Did you get any backlash from anybody? I know that's a
for
weird
for
question
the
for the
Titanic
Titanic
one.
toy.
It's funny you mentioned that. I didn't really get any backlash
Good.
except for like one single comment by a woman on like Facebook just a week ago where she was just like, "Oh, that's terrible. Shame on you." But it's not even a real it's not even a real I
No.
mean, I don't think anyone really hit the propeller. There's no eyewitness testimony from what I from what I learned. It was completely a scene made up by James Cameron himself, I think.
I think so, but it's like it's not as though we haven't done weirder things with people's death. Like, isn't one of the most famous photographs in the world a photograph of like a woman's body after she jumped out of a window and fell into a car roof?
Oh, is that the one? It's like a black and white photo and
Yes.
looks like she's just kind of sleeping.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I know. Yeah, it's interesting.
That's a real
That might.
person too. Like that wasn't a
Yeah.
movie moment. That's I mean, that wasn't a glib joke I was making. That's a real I'm going to look that up
Oh yeah.
actually.
I
Wait,
know exactly what you're talking about. I'm sure the other side of her doesn't look that great, but
Evelyn McHale. Yep. Let's see here. Her wiki article. American bookkeeper who died by suicide by jumping from the 86th floor of the Empire State Building. And a photograph was taken 4 minutes after her death. And that photo went on to be called The Most Beautiful Suicide.
oh, it's a good title for
It is, but isn't that gross when like people are like, "How dare you, passenger, hitting propeller fakery?" It's like people took a photo of this legit
it.
dead, violent, horrible moment, and they were like, "But it wasn't
Oh yeah.
glamorous."
Well,
What?
I if I'm going to do something dark from any movie scene, I'm going to expect some of that. I guess you could say. There are other ideas I've had from other movies that I probably won't do because I'll probably lose a lot of followers for it.
Okay, but
So,
like what?
well, like let's see, probably a dry sponge from the Green Mile or uh, some type of needle from Marley and Me from the end of the film.
Oh.
Something sad and dark like that. But I mean, that's kind of always been my style of comedy, is stuff
Mhm.
from the darker side. But um, yeah, so this, when I was thinking of movie scenes, this one stuck out in particular, and I'm trying to think of more, that has kind of has a comedic edge to it in an otherwise serious moment in the film. I think this is uh, the perfect type of scene to encapsulate that.
I can't
Um,
think of any other ones. I'm having a poor time of that.
yeah, yeah. No, I did a search myself after making this, and the Titanic one was a popular opinion, um, which I learned too after making this that the the character that they kind of rendered for the passenger, the visual effects supervisor of the film put the producer's face on the
Right.
model of the passenger. So you can't see it in the film because he's so tiny, but
Right.
it's actually the passenger who hits the propeller has the face of the producer of the films, which is a pretty
Yeah.
fun fact.
Yeah, and it's even like it was kind of almost a little moment of levity for the production team too. They're like, "Hey, what if we made this dude you? That'd be really funny if we made it. We made it you, and wouldn't that be really funny? We should do it. We should totally do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it."
And I'm glad they did.
I am like I know that there's a lot of I don't know how familiar you are with like the Titanic community. Um but there's a lot of minds in there, and there's many people who just like outright hate the Cameron film, which like
Mm-hmm.
do what you do. You don't have to like anything you don't want to like.
Right.
There's people out there that don't like milk chocolate, and if you want to live your whole life wrong, that's fine. But it the movie has its flaws, but it's overall a good movie, and I think part of a good movie involves admitting that it has flaws. And once
Mm-hmm.
you start admitting that it has flaws, you can sort of have these moments of levity. But there are some people who are like, you should not have a moment of comedy in a moment when things are supposed to be very,
Mm-hmm.
very serious. They're like, I guess I understand that. Like, I'm like, again,
Yeah.
that's fine. You can think that all you want to. I disagree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because life is really weird. Like, if you think about the moment, like, the worst, if you reflect back on any bad moment of your life, I'm pretty sure that if you think about it, it's one of those things where it's like, it's a funny story now, but it wasn't at the time.
Right. I know, and there are plenty of movies where you know you see them as a kid, like this one, at least in my case,
Mm-hmm.
and it's scenes like that make the movie itself memorable. I mean, that and Kate Winslet's boobs, but other than that, there are scenes that really kind of stick out to you that
Uh-huh.
you'll remember for the rest of your life. And I think this is one. Well, I remember I've said this already, but when I shared this um, toy on Reddit and social media, everyone was I was getting a lot of comments of people saying, "Oh yeah, I remember when I was a kid watching in the movie theater.
Yeah.
I was so and so somewhere when I saw it, and
Right.
that scene really stuck out. Like I remember laughing in the midst of crying at everything else."
I was watching the movie with my teacher friend,
Mm-hmm.
and as we were watching it, we were assembling part of my Lego Titanic model, and you're assembling a thing. You kind of have your head up, head down, head up, head down.
Right.
And I think she left the room 1 second, and I think that moment happened. I just heard her yell from the kitchen, "Wait, did I miss it?" Running back to the room, go, "That's my favorite part." And it's I know that some people are like, "That's terrible," but you're
Yeah.
right. I saw this movie for the first time when I was 8 years old. Like
Mm-hmm.
at 8 years old, I did not absorb a majority of the themes. I
Yeah.
enjoyed the movie. I thought it was fun. It was exciting. There was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
big music and big feelings and a big ship.
Mm-hmm.
It was neat. But there was a lot of not stuff that I like. I totally did not remember that Rose and her mom did not have a good relationship because
Oh yeah.
I was like 8 years old. I'd forgotten that Tommy existed. a bunch
Hmm.
of these little details that did not matter. But I had not forgotten that a man hit a propeller. I can tell
I
you
know,
that.
right? Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people too seem to think that the man who hit the propeller was like the chef or one of the bakers on the ship, because he's
Hmm.
also in that, like, kind of around that scene. You see him in a
Hmm.
few frames before the guy falls and hits the
Right.
propeller, but if you keep watching, you see the chef again. After, he has the flask of whiskey that he drinks,
Hmm.
and so I don't know why so many people think that was him or that it was a true story, but I learned from putting this out into the world just
Hmm.
what other people think of this scene,
Hmm.
and not so accurate, it seems.
No, and it's interesting because the baker you're referring to is Charles Jochen, and
Okay.
he is one of the most famous survivors. And actually, Cameron inserted a lot of either real people or stand-ins for real people, and
Yeah.
peppered them throughout the film. But one of the real people was this baker,
Yeah.
and he survived the sinking by getting blind fucking drunk,
Hmm.
climbing all the way up to the stern, and being the last off the ship. I think his testimony is even he didn't even get his hair wet. Like that's a real man.
Oh,
And
okay.
there is a lot of testimony that while the ship was sinking, he was running around throwing deck chairs and furniture off the side of the ship, thinking that people could grab onto it later. So that was a real guy. So yeah, it would not have been him hitting the propeller because
Right, he survived.
he did. And he also, at the very, very end when the ship sinks, I think he and Rose make eye contact and nod at each other too.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So I don't know why they would have thought that. It's just some, not to be dismissive about it, but it's just some rando. It's not a
Hmm.
character that you meet in the movie. He's got no name. He is literally like man hitting propeller.
He just has the face of the producer.
I think it's actually a CG. So I have not watched all the behind the scenes, nor have I read all the behind the scenes. But from
Uh-huh.
what I understand, there was a lot of motion capture in this film, obviously, because you couldn't
There
drop
was, yeah.
people. Yeah, I mean, I haven't checked the regulations lately, but I think that even in the 90s, it was illegal to drop people from like 250 feet up. So they did a lot of motion capture with, real stunt doubles, and then also with
Hmm.
dummies, and then inputting CG. And so I think that that person is a combination of like CG, a dummy, and a stunt double. Was like it's not even a real person doing the stunt.
Yeah, I read that he was entirely like keyframed by an animator who
Yes, yes.
was, yeah, who was at the time working on his first film, but is now like has won Oscars for other stuff like
Mhm.
Avatar. He, in fact, when I put this up on Reddit, there was a comment by a dude who had worked with this animator,
Ooh.
and he was like, "Yeah, I haven't spoken to him in decades, but I'm gonna send him this picture." And I
Yeah.
was like, I replied back, I'm like, "Hey, if you can get in touch with him and he wants one, I will make one for him
Seriously.
specifically." Yeah,
That's it's it's really interesting to think of how much goes into moments like that. It what This moment is what, 5 seconds maximum?
yeah, just about. I mean, I've watched it on YouTube too many
Mhm.
times to count now. There's even one video where someone has made like a 10-hour sequence of it, just over and over and over again for 10 hours
That's
of him
insane.
hitting the propeller. And I had to watch it a lot just to make, trying to, as a visual representation when I was deciding how to model
Uh-huh.
um, the propeller with like the
Mhm.
rivets and everything in it.
Right.
Um, and yeah, it's popular enough to get its own 10-hour video on YouTube, I guess.
I feel like you could genuinely drive someone to madness by making them watch that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was getting in my head just from watching 5 minutes of it. So
That's a lot. Again, this is a 5 second clip
hmm,
stretched into 10 hours. That's
it's
a
madness.
lot.
So
Speaking
I'm
of,
I'm
sorry.
curious. I'm
Uh-huh.
I'm curious what you think about scientists thinking that the wreck will vanish in like 10 years. Do you think by like bacteria eating away at it? Do you know anything more about this? If it's even accurate,
So
what they're
I
saying?
don't know how long it's going to be,
Hmm.
but at some point in time, the wreck will collapse. It's simply because it's made out of wood and iron. It's
Yeah.
it's just how nature works. I mean, it would be great if there was a way to somehow be like, oh yeah, it's below X feet in the sea, it's preserved.
Yeah.
So I do think that that's coming. I also think that unfortunately with global warming and the sea temperatures are rising, there's been an increase in currents. There's a lot more freaking garbage down there.
Hmm.
And over time, more and more people have gone down, and some of the submersibles have landed on the ship itself, which, can create damage. It can create openings for rust. So there's a lot of just like natural / human factors at play with
Hmm.
the wreck. So I do think eventually the ship is going to go away, just because it's being reclaimed by nature. You see all those photos of like abandoned theme parks that are completely overgrown with vines. So I think that
Hmm.
that is the ultimate fate for the ship, and it's sad to know that one day we won't be able to go down there and get those amazing photos, and you won't be able to visit the wreck site. But that's just kind of how the world works.
Yeah. And I mean, they're not able to lift it like they did in that unknown movie that
uh,
exists.
I don't, and I'm one of those weird like people that sometimes likes to get up on a moral high horse about certain things, but I'm one of those people that's like, if we could
Yeah.
lift it, I don't think we should
Oh, I agree.
necessarily.
100%. I don't think we should either.
Yeah, why?
Hmm.
Why do you think so? I will gladly lecture you on why I think so, but I feel like it's nice to ask.
Well, I mean, I would, for starters, say that the money should be better spent elsewhere.
Agree.
And second, isn't there already like a recreated model or recreation of the Titanic that's going to be done in like 5 or 6 years?
They keep talking about Titanic too. I have no idea what's going on with that because that's like some
Yeah.
individual person's project. It's not like an official
Oh,
museum, I think.
really? Okay. I thought it was some big organization that was
Well,
pulling all this money into it. Every like year or so, I'll be like, oh yeah, I wonder what the status is on that. And I'll Google it and nothing, not even like pictures or anything.
I just Googled it and it says it's a planned ocean liner to be a replica. It was announced by Australian billionaire Clive Palmer in April 2012 of
Oh,
the proposed cruise line company Blue Star Line. But
okay.
it went on a hiatus in 2018.
Okay,
But
not promising.
yeah, it
I mean,
says right
I guess it
now.
would have to be a billionaire if it was a personal project.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. It says in September 2018, Blue Star Line said that the work would recommence, and they have a conceptual design ready for shipyard pricing. But as of May 22, there have been no website updates in over 4 years, and Delta Marin referred all questions about the project back to Blue Star. A Belfast paper reported that Palmer began to doubt the economic viability of the ship once initial interest and curiosity had worn off.
Oh
What an
boy.
idiot. I Is
That's
anyone
funny.
shocked by that? I think it's
I know. It's not like Titanic is still super relevant in social media.
I mean, here's the thing though. If I were to build a Titanic today and if I were to just suddenly have a ton of money and make an exact replica of the Titanic,
Hmm.
who am I convincing to pay for third class tickets?
Yeah, true.
I mean, the standards of travel have just changed where I don't think, especially after the pandemic, I don't think I could convince people to just buy tickets and dorm in that capacity. Like you'd have to add so many more like features, and there was only like what was it, like 8 bathrooms for all of third class. You'd have to
Yeah, it
completely.
was like two bathtubs or something for
Yeah,
700 passengers.
exactly. Well, because people back then just didn't friggin' bathe as much, which I'm like,
Yeah,
I get, but then it's not an exact replica of Titanic, is it? Because you're gonna have to make it like
yeah, health
not
violations for one
gross.
thing.
Yeah, so I personally think that if anyone wanted to go the replica route, they should build it in a dry dock and have it be a museum.
Hmm.
Because that
Kind
way
of
you
like
could.
kind of like the Ark that the Creation Museum made.
Oh my god,
Yeah,
I don't remember what reason, but we used to every so often my family take a driving trip somewhere that involved going by that thing, and it was always just like that is the
really.
dumbest.
And
Yeah.
is it Kansas?
Oh gosh, I don't remember where that is.
Someplace I've never been near, but
Ark
yeah.
replica Noah. Um Life-size Noah's Ark theme attraction in Williamstown, Kentucky.
Oh, Kentucky. Okay, knew it started with K.
Yes,
Yeah,
somewhere
I
with that.
remember.
Yeah.
I remember them. There was a huge controversy about using taxpayer money or something to help finish it. and it was just, they spent so much money, and then they were losing so much money afterwards because no one was.
Oh wait, this is a
No one
different
was
one.
letting. Oh,
This is the the Noah's Ark replica. I just found it. From the Creation Evidence Museum. Yeah, that's in Texas, and I'm not shocked by that at all. But I mean, it's not to say that I think that the thing about the Titanic, though, is that I feel as though people would be more inclined to walk through it for a day than actually sail on it.
Yeah.
Or like
Absolutely.
maybe people would stay the night in the first class rooms, like make it a hotel / museum. But like I don't think people would want to voluntarily go and like.
And probably not the same route either that the Titanic took itself.
No, I think that would just be tempting a little bit too much fate. It would be like,
Yeah.
I know that hubris and human greed is what sunk the ship last time, but we don't have those problems as a modern society. So let's try that again.
Well, I mean, I was referencing more the time that it would take to travel that people wouldn't be so fond of, rather than the danger of icebergs now that so many are melting.
That's
so I don't think the danger is that. But yeah, I think these days people just want to take their selfie someplace cool and get out.
Basically what my thought is. And that's why I think the museum is a better idea, because like this Wikipedia article said, like as soon as the interest died down, it's like, all right.
Right.
It needs to be sustainable in order for it to be a thing. And that's why it's like, turning it into a museum or like a hotel where people can come and take their selfies.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you gotta do it. You don't want to trap a bunch of influencers on a ship for 7 days. Well, actually, I might want to do that now.
Have you been to the actual, like the official Titanic museum?
I went to the one in Pigeon Forge. I know there's the one in Branson, which is run by the same people, which I haven't been to, and I have not been to the artifact exhibit either.
Okay.
Have you?
No, I just, once in a while I'll see like videos of people going to a Titanic museum and sticking their hand in water where that was supposed to imitate like how cold it was.
It's
that
cold.
Night.
Some people try to see how long they can keep their hand in there. I did no such thing. I touched it with one finger, went, that's enough, and left the room. I think it's a cool experience. I really like the museum. I thought it was interesting. I recommend it, but I know some people have like mixed feelings on the artifacts exhibit. I also have slightly mixed feelings on the artifact exhibit, but that does not mean I'm not going to go see it when I am in Vegas, because I am a hypocrite.
Oh, that's right. There is one in Vegas. That's interesting.
And they're the one that has the big piece too, which in my personal opinion is like the most controversial piece of Titanic stuff. Well, mostly because it's a piece of the ship itself. Because like, I'm of the mind that if you're down there and you want to retrieve artifacts that clearly didn't belong to somebody, like China or the forks or glasses, because those didn't belong to somebody. That was ships.
Yeah.
And that's why when there are artifacts where it's like, this was someone's pocket watch, I feel a little bit more like, don't like that as much.
Yeah.
And the thing about the big piece is that it wasn't attached to the ship when they retrieved it. Like, they didn't go down there and go, aha, this piece will do, and then yank it off. It was already off the ship. So on the one hand, it's like, yeah, you didn't go down there, drill into the structure and plunder it all. But on the other hand, in the process of pulling it up, it did dislodge. And what if it had landed on the rest of the superstructure and collapsed it? Like, there's just a lot of risk that was involved. And luckily for them, it did. It didn't collapse on anything important, and it did. They managed to get it up, and it's safe and everything. And I talked to one guest on my podcast earlier who said that to be able to see the piece of Titanic in person was a life-altering experience for them. And that's why I'm like of mixed feelings about it. Because like, if it can genuinely inspire people and make them feel something and feel connected to the story, then I guess who am I to say you shouldn't have that? But on the other hand, things that aren't yours.
yeah, that's understandable. I a few years ago, I bought a VR headset, and one of the first things I did was downloaded this Titanic VR experience where some artists recreated like a couple decks of the ship, like the dining room and some lounge areas, and it's pretty. It was used it was modeled using the Unreal Engine, so it looks pretty realistic. And I think they're even every year they make more and more progress with different areas of the ship.
Cool.
And yeah, I highly recommend you check out that if you happen to have access to like some type of VR hardware, because it's probably one of the best ways to kind of put yourself in that environment without actually going there. Or
Right. I think that another podcast I listened to did the VR thing recently on the Oculus.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't own any of that VR stuff. I feel like I'd either give myself a headache or run into something. But I've been curious about trying it out. Like, is it just so that you can walk around and explore the ship?
Yeah, so the version, I think there are multiple kind of Titanic VR things out there. One
Sure.
on Oculus is kind of more, it recreates certain scenes from the event and stuff. It's more story driven. But the one I am referencing is one I think you have to download straight from a website, and it's strictly just virtual environments. So no people or anything else, just looking at very detailed models of the interior of the ship, and with the right VR headset, it looks pretty amazing.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that the one that LA was referring to is the more plot driven one, because I think it was happening. She was doing something related to the sinking, and there was
Oh,
definitely
okay.
people.
Have you gotten anyone involved in the movie?
No, I wish. That would be awesome. Not so far. I have a feeling that it's one of those things where it's like, oh, in a dream world, it would be nice if so and so heard, but like,
Yeah,
I don't know that.
yeah.
I mean, there's so many Titanic things.
Yeah.
There's also so many other like podcasts that are run by I don't know, smarter people or
Other Titanic
better.
podcasts?
There's so many Titanic podcasts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a ton. There's a lot more that are better than mine. I've been listening to one that is so fucking funny. I just like scream laughing listening to it. It's called Titanic Minute. It's done by these three guys from the Midwest, and they watch the movie minute by minute and talk about it. And it's just one of the funniest things I have ever heard in my life. Like even my mom overheard one of their segments in the other room. We were just crying, laughing at one of them losing their fucking mind. It's like, do you know what a box is? Losing my mind. It's very funny. But then on the other hand, I really love Unsinkable, the Titanic podcast. The host I was talking about, LA Beatles, which is it's much more like fact based, and she's got this wonderful like storytelling voice that's just soft and soothing and lovely. Just like there's a variety of podcasts out there, and that's why I'm kind of like, as much as I would love to have as many people on from the movie as possible, especially even Stewart, who played First Officer Murdoch, my favorite. I just feel like there's no way they'd find out about me, you know? Maybe I'm being a super negative person, but you know.
Well, you got to start somewhere.
That's true.
Like all of them.
Hey, I'm happy to start with this passenger hitting propeller toy because it made me so happy when I found it. I don't know.
How did you, may I ask how you found it? Because sometimes people will just find out from the weirdest ways.
I found out from the Titanic subreddit in
Oh,
Reddit.
you did?
Yeah, and
I don't remember posting it. Maybe someone else posted it there.
Yep, someone must have cross-posted it in there, because I remember looking at it, and the first thing, because the draft, the version that I saw had the image backing on the toy that I ended up purchasing from you had a photo of the ship sinking in the back.
Right.
The version that I saw first on Reddit had it looked like the cover from the VHS. It was the Kate and Leo.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So I remember seeing that as I was just scrolling on my phone, and it just kind of like passed me by at first, and I was like, "Excuse me," and I had to go right back up and look at it again. And then because of the movie backing, I was like, "That's not real. That's not real." And then I zoomed in on the bottom left-hand corner where it said "Contents 1,1." Poor soul.
Poor soul.
And I think I cried laughing for about 5 minutes, and then I downloaded that photo from Reddit and sent it to about 78 people I know with the caption saying, "Do you want to see a wild piece of Titanic merch? Yes, you do. Here it is."
Oh man, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing.
It was really funny.
It's shown up in the weirdest places too. Like I mean, like a friend messaged me on Facebook saying that it had popped up in some like local online like yard sales / flea market. Someone was selling it for like $2,000.
What?
And I was like, what?
Get
It's not,
out.
I know. I mean, sure, it's nice, but I don't know about $2,000. I mean, who knows where it would have gone if eBay hadn't taken it down in the height of
Right.
its trend. But so
They were
yeah,
just
it's
mad that
been
you were going to profit off of something that they didn't
probably
make.
yeah, probably. But it's been very interesting when something goes viral, just how like where it pops up on the internet.
Yeah, and I found you because I was looking for the origin of the toy.
Okay.
Because as soon as I figured out that it was parody merch. I was like, well, I have to find out where this came from, and that's
Right.
started zooming in the photo, Googled suspicious duck, and found your email address through there somewhere. And then I remember contacting you. It was like two things: number one, I need one of these, and number two, please come on my show. But yeah,
See, you did the smart thing of like looking at all of the packaging and kind of seeing with the, kind of deducing where it came from. A lot of people will automatically either assume it's like official merch and be upset by it, or two, they'll often, and this is not just with this collectible, but with my stuff or stuff of other people who make this type of art, they'll automatically assume that it's been made by arguably the most popular artist of this genre, which is Obvious Plant. Obvious Plant is a artist who makes fake toys and puts them on.
Obvious Plant.
Exactly. And he's absolutely hilarious. He's one of the reasons why I was inspired to do this kind of art myself.
Instagram, sorry.
I know you can't look at his stuff and not laugh. It's the most insane stuff you can imagine.
Dating edition. Fuck yes, I would date a ghost.
I was happy to finally buy one of his things when usually they're super expensive. They sell out wicked fast, but he's like probably the epitome of this type of art.
I'm sorry, I got the one more. I got stupid as animals. These creatures suck. Dolphin. Looks like a fish, but it is not a fish. Terrible mammal. It has done it all wrong. Look at this thing. It is so dumb. This is great. I'm sorry. Someone thinks that's real. Get out.
I know, right? I just bought one not too long ago from him. It says a prescription pill that I found on the ground. Would be fun? Question mark. It's seemed like a waste leaving it there. His stuff. There's also a guy I follow, Death by Toys, who makes really funny stuff and collectibles, oftentimes action figures. And he was really helpful recently. I was messaging him about his process, and it's just this whole community is super tight and very friendly with the process of everything. So I'm glad to kind of dip my toes into it.
That's amazing. Listen, it takes all sorts. If I've learned anything from doing this podcast, it's that everyone has their own story to Titanic, and some people's story to Titanic is deeply emotional. Sometimes it's I am a relative of a descendant, right? Or I'm a historian. And sometimes, like in my personal case or some other people's cases, it's deeply silly. But I think that they're equally important. And I was about to say, don't at me, anyone, but you know what? Fucking at me if you want to. If you want to have an argument with me, come have an argument with me. I think they're equally important.
Now, I'm sure you've told your part of this already on previous episodes, but what is your connection? How did this obsession start with you?
So, I, like most people, I'm 33, and the movie came out when I was 8 years old, like I mentioned, and I saw the movie, and I really liked it. It was, like I said, it was big, it was exciting. I played the violin. There was a lot of strings in the score. And then I liked Murdoch. He was my favorite officer. I don't know why. Just as soon as I saw him, I was like, that one. I like that one. And then it got to the scene where he killed himself. And I was 8 years old. I loved to read. I was, one of those advanced readers, but I hadn't been confronted with the concept of suicide. I read historical fiction and stuff, so not dealt with, but I'd read about murder, but it was always written about in a very and then they weren't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And this was sudden and violent, and there was no explanation, at least for my 8-year-old brain. And in my head, I also just took that to be a fact. I was like, well, that's what happened to that man, because
Mm-hmm.
James Cameron did all that research. And it wasn't until much later when one of his relatives kicked up a fuss in Scotland, and James Cameron did a non-apology, basically being like, I'm sorry you feel that way. And, there is conflicting testimony as to whether or not an officer committed suicide and whether that officer was Murdoch. I talked to historian Dan Parks, and he's of the mind that it was very likely happened. And I can see why it was a totally insane situation. I can see where I might have decided to just be and bang, because it's a lot.
I read that the family of him, this could be completely untrue, but I read that the family or descendants of him were upset that he was portrayed as shooting someone.
Yes.
And then himself.
Yes, yep. That's what it was. They were they were upset that it was an embarrassment to Murdoch's legacy. And I will say that the part I did agree with the whole bribery thing, because in all accounts Murdoch was a hero. He was responsible for saving a large majority of the survivors because he allowed men to board after there were no available women and children. So yeah, so in all accounts he was a great seaman, an exceptional sailor, and a good man. And when that whole kerfuffle happened, I don't remember how old I was in my teens, and I just remember being impacted by it again and thinking about how fiction can impact your view of history. And then I went on to become an English major. So this movie happened at a critical time for me, where it happened to coincide very much with the fact that I had a good English teacher, I had a love of literature, I liked to read, I liked to write, I liked the movie. So it all kind of fell into place as I was getting old enough to understand. So that's my Titanic story. And it's not, I don't have any relatives or anything to connect it personally, but I find it to be a deeply human story.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And I think for movies or just events like Titanic, it's for someone like me, it's more impressive for someone to have such a tie to something like this, as opposed to, I don't know, something way more popular and mainstream like Lord of the Rings, or, so by the way, do you have any Titanic tattoos?
I don't currently. So I have on my wrist, I have this sort of cuff that's like a flower with some lace and a little heart-shaped locket, but the locket really blends into the lace because it's black and gray, and so is the lace. So my tattoo artist is going to turn into the heart of the ocean. So it's going to be a little more colorful, stand out a little bit more, and be a little subtle Titanic tattoo. But
that's cool. I like that.
Other than that, I don't. Do you?
No, not of the Titanic or anything else. Someday maybe. But there's yet to be anything really I could see putting on my body permanently.
Not even passenger hitting propeller?
Maybe someday. It's interesting. I got some very interesting, weird messages from other accounts on Instagram when it was kind of blowing up. One, often, as you know, on Instagram there are tons of meme pages out there. Some people that do it just as a hobby, some businesses that turn their business page into meme pages. And anyway, the photo I took of the first version of the Titanic collectible, some company shared it as kind of like they do with other memes. And then with a lot of them, I asked them to tag me, my profile in the image, and they did. And then we talked a little bit, and they're like, hey, if you ever want to do a collaboration, we sell and make dildos, and if you ever want to make a dildo in the shape of the passenger hitting the propeller, let us know. And I was like, okay, as long as we can get it to spin. That's
So is the plan for this to have the propeller on the non-insertable portion that you can spin?
Oh, I'm sorry, not dildos, butt plugs.
Same question applies.
I assume so.
Interesting. That is I can't even laugh, but it's the funniest thing I've heard in a long time. I'm beyond laughter. I'm just delighted at that concept. When is this happening?
Probably never.
What?
I don't think anything I make should be inserted into the body. I don't think resin is very
Well, I don't think that they would
safe.
make it out of resin. I think you would design it and they would make it out of what,
Oh,
silicone?
fair silicone. Yeah, probably.
This is my assumption. Yeah, because you're right. I don't
Yeah,
think that anyone should be putting resin in their anything.
no. I think it was more of a joke
Oh, I'm sure, but
offer.
that is hysterical to visualize as a
Yeah,
concept.
and it's really what made the first week of like sharing this so memorable and fun. Just seeing what people's reactions were to it.
I love it. That's great. And I am glad you made this thing because it brought an incredible amount of delight to me and my friends at the very least. And selfishly, that makes me think it was worth it.
Oh, I'm glad you like it.
Do you have any other projects coming up, or are you going to be releasing another run of Passenger Hitting Propeller, or have we moved on from that?
No, I think I mean the demand is still there a bit. I still get messages once in a while from people
I'm sure.
asking if I'm going to restock them. Yeah, my 3D printer is taking a bit of a break from the summer heat, but once it's back up and running, I'll make some more. And in the meantime, I'm working on some collectibles catered to my hometown of Vermont,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of where things started, is making things really related to Vermont that were missing in the Etsy world. So yeah, and just other movies in general. Like not too long ago, I did one from Marvel and Doctor Strange, which did well, and
Nice.
or John Mulaney, who's one of my favorite comedians. So just about anything I can think of, if I think other people are going to like it and I like it, then I'll make it. But definitely going to be doing some more Passenger Hitting the Propeller.
I hope so because I think that more people should have them. I'm considering getting one to keep for myself. I might need to do that.
Oh, that's right. You got it for a friend, not yourself.
I did. I got it for a
Well,
friend, so I don't have one anymore.
oh, well, we'll have to change that then.
I think so. I think I'm gonna need to get one and actually have it in my official collection. I'm gonna have to have you sign it though.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on to talk to me on the show. I had an amazing time. I think your toy is hilarious. I think you should continue doing exactly what you were doing for the foreseeable future.
Well, thank you so much, Alexia. This has been really fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay. So if you're anything like me, you have now decided that you need one of Alex's amazing toys. So you should go ahead and get one. You can find Alex on Facebook and Instagram. The username is Suspicious Duck VT. That's all one word. Suspicious SUSPICIOUSDUCK V like Victor, T like Tango, or like Titanic. That is his username on Instagram and on Facebook. And if you want to check out his website, it is suspiciousduckvt.com. He is also on Etsy at suspiciousduckvt. Very useful when everyone has everything as one social media, which, gotta say, Titanic Talkline does. Get in touch with me, follow the show on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. Send me an email, titanictalkline@gmail.com. And guys, come on, we're how many interviews into that? Leave me a review. I know that you're listening. I actually went and looked it up, and most people listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, both of which allow you to leave reviews. So, go ahead and do that for me, would you please?